My name is Francis, and if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell because I post a new video every single day. If you want to become a private client, then consider hitting the website that's in the description box of this video. I also wanted to announce that my mindfulness group coaching program is starting very soon. So if you still want to be part of the class, hit the link that's in the description box of this video. In this video, what I wanted to talk about is what is spiritual awakening. Okay, because most people don't fully understand what a spiritual awakening actually is, and it's just a concept in their head. Okay, so spiritual awakening is about understanding who you actually are at a deeper level. Because right now you have this concept of who you think you are, which involves the belief systems, the experiences that you've had. There's this self-image, this concept of who you think you are, and Eckhart Tolle calls this part of you the ego. This part of you is usually something that you attach to, that you're very unconscious of as well. And this attachment is creating a lot of suffering because you have this false sense of self that really has nothing to do with who you are. And spiritual awakening is about awakening to the fact that your thoughts are not actually who you are at a deeper level, because the ego is nothing more than the conditioned part of who you are. It's the conditioning, it's the belief systems, it's the stuff that you absorbed probably from the outside, from your family, from your school, anything on the outside, and then you internalize all these beliefs and you unconsciously attach to them and agree that's who you are. So if you think that you're just a shy person right now, or you think you're just a person that isn't cut out to go for their dreams, if you just think that this is just who I am, I'm not a confident person, well, that's actually part of your ego identity. You attaching to some belief system, thinking that you're a shy person and that's just who you are, is nothing more than the ego construct that you've actually developed for yourself. When you start to spiritually awaken, you'll start to have awareness of the fact that this concept of who you think you are is not actually who you are. And unless you spiritually awaken and awaken to the fact that your ego is not who you are, you're always going to be limited to further progressing to your true life purpose in life. Because you can't fully commit to becoming a new version of yourself if you're still unconsciously attached to this identity of who you think you are. And this identity is not actually who you are, because your thoughts about who you think you are is not actually who you are. But most of us go through our life believing that these thoughts, telling ourselves that we're not worthy, we can't accomplish things, I'm just a shy person, I can only make this amount of money per year. We believe that these thoughts are who we are. We don't have awareness of the fact that these are literally just thought forms playing in our awareness unconsciously, because that's all it is. If you really start to question who you are at a deeper level, you'll realize that you are not a thought form. That is not who you are. A thought form in your head is not what or who you are, okay? And that's what spiritual awakening is about. It's about questioning who and what actually are you? Who and what actually are you? Are you a thought form? Is a thought form telling you that you're not worthy actually who you are? Now think about that for a second, because that's what may open the gateway to allow you to spiritually awaken, because you have to have the awareness and the spaciousness of your thought forms to realize that you are not your thought forms, because you can't be something that you're actually witnessing. If you have the ability to witness something, then that thing that you're witnessing can't be you. And I think it's pretty safe to say that a thought form telling you that you're not worthy, so a thought form in your head saying, I'm not worthy, is not who you actually are. That's based on the conditioning of your past, and that's something that we unconsciously attach to. And you may agree with me in this moment that that thought form is not who you are. But the problem is that when you're going throughout your day, you may be unconsciously believing that is who you are. And even if right now you create a little bit of spaciousness and you say, well, that's not who I am, I don't have to believe in that thought, I agree with you. But the problem is that you can only make this agreement, you can only disattach and disagree from that thought form if you had conscious awareness of it to begin with. And so most people don't realize that there's the witness and then there's thoughts. There's something witnessing thoughts, which is getting closer to who you actually are, but they believe that they are their thoughts. They're unconsciously attached to their thoughts. And that is what we call being in an unconscious state. That's what Eckhart Tolle calls the ego. So I'm going to give you a quick little exercise so that you can actually understand what it is that I'm talking about. So if you become conscious of your breathing right now, a second ago, that was unconscious. You were just breathing automatically, and now I'm telling you to just notice the sensation that was already there. Don't control it. Just notice the sensation that was already there. And so a second ago, your breathing was unconscious. Now it's conscious. And so in that same way, we have lots of thoughts playing in the background of our head that we are extremely unconscious of. We're not conscious of these thoughts. We don't realize that they're happening. And so in that moment that we lack awareness of our thinking, in that moment that there's no spaciousness between being the awareness, who you really are, being the awareness, being the spacious presence, being the consciousness, being the observer, being the witness. When there's no witness, when there's no observing presence in your reality in that moment, there's still thoughts playing in your head. And even though you don't have conscious awareness of those thoughts, it doesn't mean that they're still not controlling your reality. Because most people don't realize that these thoughts about who they think they are literally controlling every single aspect of their reality until you become conscious of them. Because you can't let go of something that you're unconscious of. And so even though you may not have conscious awareness of these thoughts, they are still controlling your reality, and they're always going to be controlling your reality until you realize that they're not who you are, and then you can actually replace those thoughts with new thoughts. But you can't replace them if you don't even have conscious awareness of the fact that those thoughts are playing in your head. Because most people live their lives unconsciously absorbed in their mind, and there's no awareness or spaciousness of their thinking. They're unconsciously projecting into the future, they're unconsciously projecting into the past, and they're completely identified and attached to the stream of thinking going on in their head. They're completely attached, and it creates so much more suffering. It creates a false sense of self that has nothing to do with who you are, and that personality that you think you are, that you're attached to, that ego identity construct based on the conditioning, is actually blocking you from fully stepping into your power. Because when you start to make that next step in life and live into your vision, that's going to require you to let go of that old ego construct that you have of who you think you are. Because if you want to become a confident person, for example, you have to let go of the identity of being a shy person. And so instead of working on how do I become a confident person, just focus on realizing that you are not actually a shy person. That is a construct in your mind that you have developed, that you attach to from a young age based on some experience that happened in your life. And so when you start to become conscious of your thoughts throughout your entire day, and you start to live your life as that spacious awareness, not just in meditation, not just realizing it right now by learning how to become spacious in this moment, but actually living your life from that spacious place. Every single moment of your life, you can actually live not as the person, not as the character, not as the role, but the spacious conscious presence of the forms playing in reality. Okay, and that is what a spiritual awakening really is. Spiritual awakenings can go on many different levels, but the first level usually starts with realizing that you are not the character that you've been playing. The character of who you think you are is not who you are. But a lot of us identify with this character. We believe that the character is who we actually are at a deeper level, not realizing that there is this spacious awareness, there's this consciousness happening in the background at all times that is definitely getting closer to who you really are. And so if you want to spiritually awaken and get closer to who you are, realize that it's not about finding out who you are. It's actually finding out who you are not, until all that's left is who you actually are. So you realize that you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, because they're always changing. If you can witness something that's always changing, everything in reality is changing, then you can't be that thing. Your thoughts are always changing, your emotions are always changing, and there's something witnessing that. And there's also all the feelings in your body are always changing, and so that can't be who you actually are. And so if you start to question and contemplate and realize that this is you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you're not even your body, you realize that can't be who you are either, because your body's always changing. Just question it for a second. Just question it. Question, okay, what am I not? Who am I? And don't try to get a response of who you actually are. Realize who you're not. And then once you realize who you're not, all that's going to be left is who you actually are. And that's really the essence of spirituality and spiritual awakening, so to speak. It's about finding out who you actually are beyond the identification that we unconsciously have with our mind. Because most people are attached to the character and the role, and then when you start to spiritually awaken, you're going to start to question this role. You're going to start to realize, wait a second, if I'm not my thoughts, then who actually am I? And then you'll create that spaciousness. You'll create that openness. And that's really the essence of spiritual awakening. And this is super powerful, because when you start to spiritually awaken, this gives you the freedom to play any role, any character that you want with no resistance. Because right now, if you try to create a new character for yourself, if you try to become a new person, there's going to be resistance, because you're unconsciously attached to that old identity of who you think you are. But if you spiritually awaken to who you actually are, which is pure empty awareness and consciousness and spaciousness, and none of these words are actually who you actually are. It's just pointers to that actual spaciousness that you can only experience. When you start to realize that all these things aren't who you are, and you realize that you're just the spaciousness, okay, that comes before all the form, when you realize that you are nothing, you are no form, no thing, you can actually become anything that you want, because you're not attached to any form. You know that it's not who you are, and you can become more of a shapeshifter of reality, so to speak. Because when you live as the awareness and not the person, you start to have more freedom, and you start to open infinite possibilities in your life. So let me give you a practical example of this, okay? If you become conscious of the fact that you have a belief system and a thought playing in your head telling you that you are not a confident person, or I'm a shy person, or I'm not worthy, and then you become conscious of that thought, what you realize is that you're not that thought, that's not who you are. And then the moment you create that spaciousness, the moment that you create that spaciousness between you as the awareness and that thought of not being worthy, you just opened infinite potential possibility in your life that wasn't there before, because before this experience, you were unconsciously identified with that thought. You were unconsciously believing in that thought. But when you create this spaciousness, you open more possibility, because you say, wait a second, that's not who I am. So it's not about saying, oh, I am somebody that's confident. It's realizing that you telling yourself that you're not confident, or you telling yourself that you are confident, both of these are based on the conditioned self. Both of these are based on the construct of who you think you are. So when you spiritually awaken, when you live as the awareness, you open yourself to not have any resistance to any belief system, any thought that you want to place in your mind. And this is so powerful, because this can completely change your self-image and who you think you are, and you're not going to be in resistance to that new self-image, because you know both of them are ultimately creations of your mind. We're creators of our reality. But when you're not attached to the creation and you know who you are at a deeper level, there's no resistance. So when you realize that you're nothing, you can actually become everything. And I'm sure that you've heard this before, and it didn't make sense to you, but maybe now it's making sense to you. But it's not about that you're nothing. It's about realizing that you are no thing. You're no form in reality. So you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings, you're not your emotions. You are not the character that you think you are. When you disidentify from that old version of you, then you can rewrite a new story. So when you let go of the old story of who you think you are, then you can rewrite that story in any way that you prefer with no resistance. You can start using affirmations, using prayer. You can start telling yourself things, and you won't have resistance because you've raised your level of consciousness enough and awareness to realize that you can't identify with any of these things. When you disidentify, you open so much room, so much possibility to actually become who you want to be. So it's not about becoming something new. That will naturally happen, but it's about letting go of the attachment to who you thought you were, realizing who you are not, letting go of the attachment to that sense of self that usually includes anger and fear and worry and lack of confidence and lack of self-worth and shame. And all of these things are not who you actually are. They're not who you actually are. They are just attachments that we've created. And so that is really what the essence of spiritual awakening actually is. Spiritual awakening is nothing more than realizing who you actually are at a deeper level as a result of realizing who you are not. It's realizing the formless part of who you are. In Buddhism, they call it the I before the I am. That sense of I, that sense of I exist before a thought tells me that I exist. Before a thought tells me I am something, I have that feeling of I that comes before everything. You can also call it the formless part of who you are. And that's an interesting word, because if I'm saying formless and it's not a form, well then what the hell is it? If it's not a form, if it's not a thought, if it's not a feeling, if it's not an emotion, if it's not a person, if it's not a thing in reality, if it's not something, then what is it? It's actual, honest to God nothingness that comes before any form, and that is who you really are. But you can experience this counterintuitively and paradoxically. You can't experience that true nothingness because the experience is the thing that comes out of that, but you can realize where all those experiences are coming from, which that is the true essence of who you are. That is spiritual awakening. That opens you up to the true possibility of molding and shaping the character that you want to become in life with no resistance, because it's all just a game. It's all just a game. You can literally choose any story and you can literally become anybody you want. You can become anybody that you want without resistance when you spiritually awaken, because you know that it's not who you are, but you can play that role for fun. You can just play the role. You cannot attach to the role. You can still have a role. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have an ego. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have this role to play, but you know that at a deeper level, it's not who you actually are. So that's all I have for you today. If you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Once again, my mindfulness group coaching program is now open. So if you want to be part of the class, hit the link that's in the description box of this video. If you want to become a private client, then consider applying for a free consultation by once again hitting the link that's in the description box of this video. Have yourself a great day and see you in the next video.